Also about security guarantees, what progress is currently being made on finalizing the prosperity plan and security guarantees that could allow President Zelensky to attend Davos? And how critical are decisions on energy packages and additional air defense systems for enabling this trip? Because we heard that the president of Ukraine emphasized that today Ukraine is used air defense missiles worth 80 million euros, adding that it is difficult to obtain both the missiles themselves and the funding required for them.
Yes, I mean, this continues to be a problem, especially beginning in the year 2025, beginning in the summer of 2025, as the president of the United States is fond of saying that he did not start this war. This is not my war. This is very much Trump's war now, because in 2025, the war changed. You very well know that the war in 2022 and 2023 was a ground-based war. It was a war of infantry, of mechanized vehicles. Many of those have been destroyed, especially on the Russian side, because of the heroism of Ukraine. But now the war has changed into a constant daily bombing, much more similar to what the Nazis were doing against England during World War II, trying to break the spirit of the head of democracy in Europe. And this means that without proper air defenses, without additional material that can target deeper into Russia, to eliminate those factories that make the Shaheds, eliminate the factories that are outfitting the glide bombs. Only with that kind of support can Ukraine maintain a level of defense, and that all has to happen with our partners. We know that Europe has been, unfortunately, too slow in manufacturing arms by itself. It has switched over into purchasing a lot more weapons from the United States once the United States decided to stop support of Ukraine by sending its own arms through its own appropriations process. So the fact that Ukraine is focusing on what the emergency needs are, we know that we'll probably hear from other leaders how important it is. We'll hear it from leaders at Davos that how important it is to keep sending that kind of material to Ukraine. But it's also going to be very important for Ukraine, as it has been focusing on getting energy from other countries and getting replacement parts for its energy stations up and running as soon as possible, given the severity of the winter this year.
Andriy, and we thank a lot for our partners for this help. And if we're talking about United States of America and Donald Trump, yes, President Donald Trump um, has sent an invitation to Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky to join the Peace Council. The Financial Times reports, citing its sources. However, Ukraine is not rushing to accept the proposal, as those invited to the council reportedly include Russian dictator terrorist Vladimir Putin and Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. What is your assessment of the invitation from President Trump for Ukraine to join the Peace Council? What are the potential benefits or risks for Ukraine in engaging in such a forum?
I think that as many international leaders will figure out a way of stepping away from this invitation, this seems to be President Trump's idea of developing a body that would be more important than the United Nations, especially given that he would want to exert his own personal control over such a body as permanent chairman in his mind of this International Peace Council. Unfortunately, as we've seen in the numerous interactions that he claims to have solved wars across the world, many of these conflicts, including actually all of them, haven't had a permanent peace deal still signed. There are still many issues in many parts of the world where the United States claimed that President Trump has created a ceasefire, has created peace. Therefore, I think the skepticism about other members of the world, especially given the fact that President Trump is extracting $1 billion from each leader to become a member, it's also very questionable about who exactly would be on this peace panel. Is it the president and leader of a country or the individual themselves? Given the fact that President Trump had some comments about President Macron and that he shouldn't join the Peace Council because he won't be president in a couple of months. So it's still questionable. Are these countries? Are these individual people who will have to use their country's funds of $1 billion to become members of this. It's very unclear what this is, as many proposals by President Trump are simply proposals, and then his administration and his advisors try to put his crazy proposals onto paper without doing any proper review or robust discussion about what the practicality of doing any of these things, whether that's attacking Greenland, attacking Venezuela, attacking boats in the Caribbean, changing the name of different countries, changing the name of bodies of water and mountains. All of this doesn't seem to have any interagency or independent voices challenging the thoughts of President Trump within the White House, within the administration, and therefore all of his wildest thoughts go out into the word publicly without having been vetted first.
And President of Ukraine, Zelensky, emphasized for now it is very difficult for me to imagine how we could be together with Russia in any kind of council. This does not concern this peace council specifically. Simply put, Russia represents a council of war, and Belarus is alongside them.
Yeah, and I think that's not just going to be a problem for Ukraine. That'll be a problem for many countries, especially the Ukraine's partners in Europe, to sit on a council with Russia at the moment, especially with all the sanctions that many other countries have put on Putin, not least of which the fact that he's an international war criminal wanted for genocide against Ukraine's children.
And members of the US Congress are seeking that 25th amendment to the US Constitution, which allows for the temporary removal of a president if he is unable to perform his duties. The initiative was put forward by Democratic Representative Yasamin Ansari of the House of Representatives as evidence of what she described as President Trump's mental unfitness. The Congresswoman attached a letter from Trump to the Prime Minister of Norway in which he linked his statements about seeking to take control over Greenland to the fact that he had not been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Can you explain, if you know, the process and implications of invoking the 25th Amendment in this context? How likely is it that Congress could take action based on this initiative?
Right. The 25th Amendment can't be enacted by Congress. It's for the executive branch, not the legislative branch. It was discussed at the end of President Trump's first term in office with regards to his actions dealing with the insurrection on January 6th. At that point, it was questioned by members of his cabinet. We have this on the record by the January 6th investigating committee in Congress that members of President cabinets back then were discussing. However, this was the last month of the administration. Many members of the cabinet had resigned already due to the fact that the administration was ending, the elections had happened. They knew that they were not continuing on. So the members of the cabinet had been temporary members at that point anyway. And so, therefore, no actions were taken to invoke the 25th Amendment in the first administration. Here again, President Trump, because he was so upset even at the idea that some temporary members of his administration back in the first, in 2021, January 2021, were considering that, he assembled a cabinet of loyalists this time, people who would never consider invoking the 25th Amendment, and therefore it's a moot issue. Even if Congress wants to talk about, no member of President Trump's cabinet would even be brave enough to bring this up, given the fact that they already know that the retribution that would go against them for speaking out against Trump is quite harsh.
Andriy, and Donald Trump also published a photo in which not only Venezuela and Greenland, but also Canada are painted in the colors of the US flag. In private conversations, Trump has already begun complaining about Canada's vulnerability to Russia and China in the Arctic. What do you think? Is Canada next?
Canada, President Trump has failed with Canada. President Trump sought to make Canada subservient to the United States, as opposed to being a great partner. You know, if you are a country and you have a choice of having a strong economy, a strong allied with a good military that goes on deployments with you, or having a weaker economy, having a weaker military. That seems to be what Trump would prefer, having a weaker country next to the United States, which does not help the United States. And what Canada has done is not sit around and wait to be swallowed up by the United States, but they just announced a massive deal with China going forward. What the United States has been fighting for the last 15 years was to block any importation of Chinese electric vehicles into North America. And that has fundamentally ended as of this trade negotiation between Prime Minister Carney and Xi Jinping in China. Now, Canada's electric vehicle market will not be dominated by American cars. It will be dominated by Chinese electric vehicles. They will soon take over the domination of the market in America as well, I'm sure. And everything that the United States have been trying to do to block China from overtaking its domestic electric vehicle market has failed because of the actions of President Trump. So Canada is not going to be swallowed whole. Canada is going ahead with making international agreements and deals, and they are exposing the weakness of President Trump's strategy of going individually from country to country and trying to break up alliances like the European Union, which itself responded to his tariffs by signing a historic free trade agreement with South America, something that the United States does not want to do now. It has broken every free trade agreement since President Trump came into office. And here, these other countries will now benefit from that. They will cut the United States off from the trade. They will make the United States a less wealthy country, and those countries will help themselves.
And what about Greenland now? Trump published an image showing him along with Vice President and Secretary of State planting the US flag in Greenland. And Danish member of the European Parliament, Anders Vistisen, said about Greenland, quote, "I will say it in your language, President Trump, sorry." What do you think about this, and what is happening around Greenland?
As I try to explain to my American friends, diplomacy is like having relationship. It's like having a 50, 100, 300-year marriage. And in that kind of relationship, in diplomacy specifically, your partner will always remember the worst thing you've done. At some point, United States will be at a table with Denmark in the future. They will be at a table with countries like South Africa or Ukraine. These are three countries that have been insulted by President Trump personally, insulting their president, insulting their country. And at some point, America will be sitting at a table in the future, and those countries will remember the insults. They will remember the pictures that were shared online, and they will bring those up at negotiations when the United States wants a favorable trade deal, when they want a favorable access militarily. So diplomacy is, in essence, a long should be thought of as a long personal relationship, like a long marriage with a partner that never forgets. And in this case, President Trump is hurting America, not just today, but he's hurting America in the future, which is the real problem for a president who doesn't understand that he's only in office for a certain amount of time and that history continues after him.
Andriy, and a little bit more about Ukraine. The EU is considering the creation of a new military alliance with Ukraine, but without the United States, Politico reports. The move is gaining momentum amid Trump's threat to seize Greenland. According to the outlet's sources, many European governments have concluded that a divorce is now inevitable and are calling for a tough response from Europe. The new military bloc could be formed on the basis of a coalition of the willing. With Ukraine, France, Germany, Poland, and the United Kingdom included, it would represent a powerful force comprising both nuclear and non-nuclear states. How feasible is the formation of such a coalition in practice? How might Russia perceive and respond to this potential alliance?
Well, first, if we speak to our friends in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, they will say, "What took you so long? We have been screaming for this for many, many years." To take countries such as Germany, France, UK, and others to move ahead with this has been a long diplomatic task. And the fact that we are getting closer to these countries talking about it openly, even that is progress. But however, it's never progress until we finally get to a point where something is actuated with a deal or with actions on the battlefield. For instance, many of the countries I mentioned would very much like to see Europe begin to defend the skies over Western Ukraine to begin with, if not most of Ukraine. We certainly have the capability with the European forces. We saw how they were deployed alongside American forces to defend the skies of Israel from Iran. To do so on a nightly basis against Russia would be a very easy task for European countries, and we hope to see that sooner rather than later. As far as creating a military alliance, again, this is something that the United States, with its removal of itself from the Eastern Hemisphere, Europe and the Middle East specifically, leaving those domains not in the hands of the Secretary of State in America, but really in the hands of a private real estate developer, Steve Witkoff. He is really being the Secretary of State for the Middle East and Russia. And we'll see what happens of that, if that means that the United States is so far removed from internal affairs that it falls upon Europe and Ukraine to make their own security agreements. But again, this is something that has been demanded for a long time, and it's doubtful whether we can get to final completion, given the fact that we have serious political forces working against it. We know that the parties in Germany aren't all aligned with this idea, and so certainly Chancellor Merz is thinking about the future elections in Germany and how they would respond. We know that a similar situation exists currently in public polling in France and the United Kingdom, that they have opposition parties that are ready to take control who would stand against this as well. So it's a very complicated process to move forward, but the fact that we are talking about it is progress in and of itself.
And President of Ukraine, the president of Ukraine, said that Russia plans to have a 2.5 million strong army by 2030. Europe, he noted, needs at least 3 million combined rapid reaction forces. Zelensky emphasized that he has repeatedly appealed to European leaders with the proposal to create unified armed forces, but so far no one has taken a step toward implementing this idea. Why? A simple question: what implications would such a build-up have for European security if we're talking about 2.5 million strong army, Russian army by 2030?
This is really the only reason that we will have progress in Europe, is because of the actions of Russia, whether it's attacking its neighbors or building up its armed forces. This is the only reason why NATO changed its course in terms of members of NATO changed their course in terms of spending. It wasn't because of President Trump. It wasn't because of actions of America. It was because they had a war on their doorstep. And it's only because of that war that they decided to increase their domestic spending, as well as develop the means for manufacturing weapons on European territory. This is the real problem. It's, yes, finding troops. Europe will find the troops within its own ranks, but to have an army and a military complex that can exist by itself within Europe, not just being reliant on American weapon technology, that's the real problem. And that's something that they have begun changing in the last 10 years, and hopefully move to a place where they can develop their own 155 millimeter shells as much as Ukraine and other countries need. Intermediate rockets like the Tauruses and Storm Shadows can be produced at scale, not just individual batches. And then a response to something close to the Tomahawk as well, to make sure that they are ready to fight in a variety of spheres.
We're ready, and we are waiting for Tomahawks, missiles, and not only for towers too. And thank you so much for joining us today for this meaningful conversation and for unwavering support for Ukraine and its people. Andriy Dobriansky, Director of Communications and Media at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, shared his insights with us. Please share this interview and continue standing with Ukraine. Thank you so much. See you.
Дякую.
Дякую.